Well, an episode like this is why I was saying we don't need to exaggerate how bad the first 2 episodes were. Eventually, the Acolyte was going to show its true colors, and we didn't have to wait long. What's up everyone, and welcome back to HateWatchers. Today we're continuing on with our coverage of the Acolyte with episode 3, entitled Destiny. Let's get right into the breakdown. Spoilers ahead. We kick things off 16 years in the past on the twins' idyllic home planet where we find the girls torturing small animals. The 2 girls dap each other up before some cheap-looking Zabrak woman scolds them for being all the way out here where evil men could be lurking. And totally unrelated, nearby we see Master Squid lurking. Together they return to their perfect, diverse, all-female village of witches where Osha and Mae are the only children in this indoctrination coven of groomers. Then their mother, Mama Marxist, comes out. Comes out of the hallway, not the closet. She came out of the closet a long time ago in a dive bar far, far away. She gets frisky with this thorny woman who tells her exactly how she likes it.
A firm hand is required.
During some PowerPoint presentation, Mama Marxist tells her daughters that the Force is not a power to wield, before she immediately turns and begins to wield the Force as a power. Then the 2 moms pretend to sense something and end the presentation early, before anyone can criticize their teachings. Osha doesn't want to attend the big important ascension ceremony later that night, and one of her moms preaches the warrants of socialism before telling her impressionable young daughters that the rest of the world doesn't accept people like us, and to make sure to go out into the world thinking that. Boy, that's setting your kids up for success. When the 2 girls are getting they hair did, Osha hides her copy of Wealth of Nations before making it clear that she wants to see the galaxy outside of Brendak, and maybe not grow up in some commie witch cult. At night, the witches begin their ascension ritual of super strong, diverse female powers. Either that, or they're all on drugs. Mama Marxist shows up and alludes to the gift of life, which magically conceived these 2 golden-robed miracles. Like Anakin Skywalker, but way stupider, and it checks more boxes this time. They complete their vagina monologue-inspired socialist chanting and blast some wavy blue stuff into the girls' faces, which is supposed to be the Force, or whatever the author of this fan fiction was imagining. This abomination thankfully gets interrupted by the Jedi, who are hopefully here to begin the Brendak witch trials. The witches try to hide the children that they're grooming, but the Jedi's incredible investigative skills are able to find the twins hiding 20 feet away. Master Squid meets Osha and Mae, and Master Trinity asks the uncomfortable question.
Where is their father?
But they proudly exclaim that they didn't need no man, so there was no man. After some initial reluctance and some haggling, the witches agree to send both girls to the Jedi for evaluation. Back inside, the witches argue as the thorny older woman says, "I carried those children," but Mama Marxist claps back and says she created them, an argument that you might one day hear outside a Planned Parenthood. Then we get more Marxist talking points.
This is about power, and who is allowed to use it.
It's the bourgeoisie, man. They're holding us down, man. Their mother makes another point that 8-year-old Osha deftly swats aside with simple logic, confirming that their mother is an idiot. The twins show up for testing, which they agree to fail on purpose, and Osha branches off to talk to a Wookiee because after spending her whole life with that village of idiots, even a grunting rug sounds like a genius. After catching her failing on purpose, Master Squid convinces Osha to join the Jedi, leaving Mae disappointed. The twins fight in front of their lesbian mothers before Mama Marxist tells Osha that the decision is hers, before then immediately saying the council will discuss and decide for her, proving that this show can't even be consistent across 2 consecutive lines of dialogue. You know, I can't help but notice that neither of these twins seems to give a single fuck about their white-ish mother. You know, their actual mother that birthed them. Mae casually promises to kill her sister Osha before locking her in their room and lighting a book on fire, which immediately spreads and forces Osha to flee. In seconds, that fire somehow has exploded their entire mountainside grooming base. Osha runs into Mae, who tells her that the one mother they care about is dead. Master Squid saves Osha, and on the way out, he makes sure to take her past the corpses of everyone she's ever known, including her one important mom. Somehow, the fire has rapidly engulfed their mountain home made of metal and stone. Osha wakes up in the care of the Jedi, and Master Squid tells her that Mae
started the fire! It was always burning!
Squid comforts her and tells her she can become his Padawan, while Mae is left alone on the planet. And mercifully, the episode comes to an end. And with that, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch. But there's truly no decision to make. This episode is an out-and-out hate watch. This episode is the worst thing ever produced on screen by Disney Star Wars. And this is a franchise that put Lizzo in space, and not in a nice banishment kind of way. An episode like this is why we didn't need to jump the gun and condemn this show before it even started. You just knew an episode like this was coming down the pipeline that would send the Acolyte right down the tubes where it belongs. If you just listen to the discourse about the first 2 episodes without watching them, it'll be hard to really appreciate how fast this episode drove whatever the show had going for it right off a cliff. Episodes 1 and 2 weren't damning on their own, and we said as much in our review, but this one is a whole different story. If the cringy, all-female socialist coven and its thinly veiled or entirely unveiled social messaging wasn't enough, this episode went even further by intentionally damaging the original Star Wars story, hijacking Anakin's special origins as being born of the Force itself, and bestowing that honor upon these 2 turds who couldn't be more irrelevant to the larger Star Wars mythos. But we'll circle back around to that. Let's instead start off with the real petty things, like these twins. With a budget of $180 million, they couldn't find actual twins for this show. I mean, them being identical twins is kinda the whole premise of the story. You know, with the mistaken identity thing, you cheap asses. In a similar vein, boy, it looks like Torben had a rough 16 years. No wonder he refused to go outside for a decade. Then we had this village ceremony that will make you viscerally cringe. It's harder to watch than a meth-fueled interpretive dance street performance by toothless tweakers.
Come, claim your destiny.
The power of many.
Imagine being an actor and being a part of a scene like this and not questioning your choice of profession. Or worse, thinking that you're part of something special and powerful. This was a horrible scene and everyone involved should feel bad. And then we can focus in on these girls' mother. Well, the only mother the writers made them care about, that is. Who could ever know why they didn't want anything to do with this mother? Anyway, Mama Marxist is a walking contradiction. At least 3 times she said something and then immediately said or did the opposite. She said the Force was not a power to be wielded, and then wielded it before she took another breath. She says to the twins, "Your enemies will not warn you before attacking. Now block me." Then she tells Osha that the decision to leave with the Jedi is hers and hers alone, before telling her that she and the other witches will decide the matter themselves. She's a walking contradiction, which is hilarious because in this instance, it's obvious that they wanted this character to be wise and poetic and memorable and graceful and strong, but she comes off like an NPC with no logical consistency between her words and actions. And the whole episode had some of the worst dialogue you'll ever hear, brought to you by terrible acting performances. But all of that pales in comparison to what the revelation about the twins' conception does to the original Star Wars saga, the story of Anakin Skywalker. It cheapens the very thing that made Anakin special in the Star Wars mythos. It further unravels the prophecy of the Chosen One, and it makes the Force itself look dumb, as apparently it's just birthing people left and right, no matter how irrelevant. So rather than the Force being the guiding power that drives the galaxy, it's shown to be some fickle chaos agent. And I'm sure it's no coincidence that that very term appears on the infamous High Republic storyboard. Anakin is the Chosen One, not one of several Chosen Ones. When 2 of the most powerful and most evil Sith to ever live conspired to manipulate the Force into doing their bidding, the Force struck back by instead conceiving the very figure who would be their undoing. Now, we're supposed to believe that a box-checking Marxist witch not only achieved that same feat, but had double the output. And for what? 2 characters that are so insignificant that they're not even known 85 years later by the time of the Phantom Menace? Fuck off. Next, they decided that Palpatine somehow returning in Episode 9 didn't do enough to unravel Anakin's actions in the original trilogy. Nope, they needed to go a step further and make the prophecy of the Chosen One look like it came out of some drugged-up hippie burning sage in a crystal shop. And to top it all off, it makes the Force look like it's just working at random. That the binding power of the universe would grant some miracle to a bunch of witches living in an isolated commune. And not for some greater purpose in the universe, but, in the eyes of Leslye Headland, simply as a reward for their inherent goodness, as determined by their skin color, gender, and orientation. What makes this all the worse is that this is intentional, as the creators chose to strike right at the heart of the original Star Wars story. Leslye Headland, and more so Kathleen Kennedy, just cannot allow the original Star Wars story to stand untarnished. Kennedy has no interest in producing good Star Wars, or profitable Star Wars, or even good stories. She only cares about leaving her mark and crafting her legacy, even in the face of the fact that her legacy will be that idiot who found a way to kill Star Wars. Pulling this immaculate Force conception out of their ass for these entirely new, totally inconsequential characters at the expense of Anakin Skywalker's story and the original Star Wars saga is the most blatant, disrespectful, and intentionally damaging thing done to the franchise to date, with the destruction of Luke Skywalker's character a close second. Remember that this trash was given twice the budget of Kenobi, a show which brought back fan favorites Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen to play Obi-Wan and Vader. The Disney Plus show that could have been the only one to have redeemed Disney Star Wars for most fans. But this shitty fan fiction show, with its intentionally destructive nature, was worth twice as much to Disney and Kathleen. And if they're not going to be respectful, then neither should we. Harvey Weinstein. Many have been proclaiming Star Wars dead for a long time, but this is the biggest nail in the coffin so far. Sadly though, I get the feeling Disney and Kathleen Kennedy have quite a few more nails lined up and ready to go. So we'll just have to see how deep a chasm they can cast this franchise down into. And while I won't act surprised that they would stoop to this level, even from our impossibly low expectations, this is pretty appalling. This episode was everything that Star Wars fans were worried the Acolyte would be. Now, just to cover our bases, while this episode didn't plainly state the exact origination of the twins, it's heavily implied that they were conceived by their bullshit Force thread magic. I don't think they have any intention of pulling back from that idea, but I strive to only add truthful information and honest opinion to the public discourse through these reviews. So I'd be remiss not to mention that caveat for those who may not be watching the show. Just as a side note in regard to who started the fire, we didn't see Mae drop the burning book or the lantern. I'm betting the big twist is that someone else came along and made her drop it, so be on the lookout for that revelation. The other thing you should be on the lookout for after this abysmal showing is the viewership drop-off for next week's episode. It should be a doozy. Did you think Disney Star Wars would stoop to this level? Did you think the Acolyte would take more than 3 episodes before showing its true colors? Do you think this is worse than the destruction of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi? How much would Disney have to pay you to watch this show? Let us know in the comments. And if you haven't already, like the video if you liked it, and remember to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on the Acolyte. Thank you for attending the Brendak Witch Trials with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.